If you go to a lot of movies, you know there's nothing funner than comparing the different styles of movie directors. Take, for example, Ken Russell. He goes for a montage of orchestrated frenzy in his films, as opposed to Sidney Lumet, who likes a more straightforward view of life. Well, if you're talking about director Mark Lester, as the commercial says, there's no comparison. Mark hasn't so much adopted a style of filmmaking as he has created one of his own. His films can best be described as satirical live-action cartoons, made with great vision and insight. Mark takes a Hollywood convention, employs it in his films, and then turns the convention upside down, as in his action film Truck Stop Women, where the heroes were gun-tooting, tough-talking, no-nonsense women barking out orders to men. In his latest film, Class of '84, Mark has taken the grade B genre to the zenith, giving me probably the most emotional and jolting time at the movies I've had in a long time. Mark, your career has really gone sky high since the beginning of when you started with Trisha's Wedding. Is that what you started with? And
yes, that was the first movie.
And then you've gone, now you're working on something else too after Class of '84.
Yeah, Class of 1984 was a very good experience. The Dino De Laurentiis, who was when the film played in New York, went to see the picture, and he called me to see if I had any ideas for new movies. And I had, on the airplane going to the Rome opening of the film, I had read this book, Year of the Dragon, which I just picked up at the airport.
Yeah.
And by Robert Daly, who wrote Prince of the City. And De Laurentiis had read the same book, as it turned out, and so we decided to make this film, which will be the next picture I'm doing.
Huh, great. Your career started one of the most interesting ways. Can you just tell us a little bit about you? From what I know, you moved to Los Angeles to Berkeley and did some work for the Free Clinic and then got into documentaries. Can you kind of give us a little travelogue of
Well, actually, I started out in films I started by going to work for a documentary film company that was making anti-Vietnam War films, like in 1969. And my main interest was in politics. Mm-hmm. So I did some of these anti-war films, and then from there I came up with the idea to do a spoof of Nixon's daughter's wedding, which we called Trisha's Wedding.
Which is quite a cult.
Right, it was like the Rocky Horror Picture Show of its time, and it was a very big midnight show type of film.
Yeah. Now, you shot that in San Francisco?
Right, it was shot in San Francisco. It was very successful for, the genre it was, and which was a campy sort of comedy. Uh-huh. And then from there I began a series of features, beginning with Steel Arena, which you saw.
Uh-huh. When you made Trisha's Wedding, there's reputed different budgets for the film. How much did you actually make that film for, and how long was the film?
The film was an hour long, and it was made for $3,600. That was the exact budget, but nobody got paid. It was all done. Everyone worked for free at the time.
So then you went on to do the Steel Arena, which was also kind of a inexpensive film to do, wasn't it?
Well, actually, that picture cost $200,000. It was It was a 110-minute feature film. But remember, in 1969 and 70, when these pictures, you could make $200,000 would be like equivalent to $1.5 million today.
Yeah.
It's still low budget, but it went a long way.
When you were making the Steel Arena and Trisha's Wedding, outside of the documentary films you were doing, did you go to film school, or did you go to any official?
No, I tried to get into film school before I started making any films at all. I had the idea that I wanted to make films, and I went to 4 or 5 film schools, and I had a degree in political science, so you had to be like a art major to get into film school. So they refused me admission, which was the best thing that ever happened, I suppose.
So then, that's really amazing. How did you? Then people have to go years and go through the experience just to put together a half-hour film. How did you happen to go from such little experience to being such an accomplished director your first time out?
I don't know. It just all kind of happened by accident. I never really planned anything.
Were you one of those people who, as a child, studied films in theaters and?
Yeah, I was really very interested in films. It was entertainment, you know. It's a film goer.
Okay, so after Steel Arena, was it Truck Stop Women that came after that, or?
Right, Truck Stop Women I made.
Which is itself a classic in itself.
Yeah, I love that film actually, because that was the idea was to do. It was an old movie called They Drive by Night by Humphrey Bogart.
Uh-huh.
So I had the idea that I should, and I'd read a story about women who drive trucks.
Yeah.
I thought it was like sort of update that kind of idea of that old truck driving movie, but I put women as all the truck drivers.
Now, the interesting thing about those two films are usually when filmmakers start out making less expensive movies, the reviews are somewhat negative. Those two films, Steel Arena, Truck Stop Women, really got good reviews. I read a lot of good reviews, and the reviewers found that it worked on a whole lot of levels, and satire, action, all sorts of. Did you know this was going to happen?
No, I didn't. It started with the Rolling Stone. There was a critic, John Landau, who's now Bruce Springsteen's manager, and he did a whole full page in the Rolling Stone, the best movie of the year, he called it. And he did the same thing for Truck Stop Women. They had pictures and most original movie of the year. And
so that
I suppose when you don't really know, you just. I wasn't living in Hollywood. I was living in the Bay Area, and they were original because I didn't have anything to. I wasn't trying to make something that everyone else was making, so it was just totally, some crazy ideas I had for movies. And
well, how did you get into being very political to making these kind of off the wall sort of films?
Well, I consider the movies very social and political. I mean, Class of 1984 is a lot of the reviews that pointed that out. I mean, it's really a statement about American society and education.
Yes.
In fact, in Europe right now, that film is a sensation. Every country it's opening in Europe and doing fantastic business, and they really see it as an important type of film.
Did America did that film scare them a bit, or did they just see it as a straightforward action drama?
Well, I get all the clippings from all over the country, the clipping service, and it is. I mean, the PTAs in a lot of cities were picketing the film. Some little towns tried to ban the film. A lot of that type of thing was happening.
Well, how does it feel to have caused such an uproar?
I think it's fun because movies, should. The TV people watch. You have to have something different to get people into the movie theaters. And
that film, I remember when it first released, and the critics were divided. Sneak previews almost went to war about Class of '84, and you really caused quite a lot of talk.
It was very controversial. The critics either loved the picture or they hated the picture. There was no middle ground. At the end of the Siskel-Ebert show, in fact, Gene Siskel said, "Did we see the same movie, Roger?" He couldn't believe it that they had watched the same film.
Yeah, I think they said that on the other show too.
Yeah, they were so divided. It was like two different movies they were watching.
Well, we have a little bit from the film just to give people watching an idea of why it was so controversial. But before we show it, why don't you describe what we're going to see? And
well, in this scene, Roddy McDowall, who's great in the film, he plays a teacher who is having a nervous breakdown because he fears this teenage gang that's been running the school, dealing drugs and terrorizing the teachers. And so he, in this scene, and the Timothy Van Patten is a leader of the gang who earlier in the film, the gang has killed all of Roddy McDowall's lab animals. So this has caused the biology teacher, Roddy, to perform what he does in this scene that we're going to see.
Actually, throughout the film, I did think the scene was very funny, even though it's very scary.
It's supposed to be black humor.
Yeah, it's a classic. So why don't we take a look at this scene now and give you a taste of Class of '84.
Hi, Jerry. Well, you shouldn't be in here, Andrew. What are you doing?
I'm teaching.
Can't you see that?
You tell us the factor for the female of the species.
Stand up when the teacher talks to you.
Wait a minute, Jerry.
Andrew. I don't come into your class and tell you how to teach now. What is the answer, please? Well, you simply cannot afford to fail this class. Now, what is the answer? Ah! What is the answer? Ah, please. Why? What? You see how simple it is? Oh, he has never answered a question in this class. I'm finally teaching him. Oh, tell me, how many chambers are there in the human heart? Oh, come on.
4. I think 4.
It's wonderful. Oh, it's a pleasure. It's just a pleasure. Oh, such a tremendous pleasure. Mr. Stegman, what is an amphibian? You should know. We had such a wonderful display hanging on our wall. You don't know. It's too bad. You do not pass.
We're gonna have to work with him, Jerry.
Oh, but Andrew, it takes such an awful lot of work. And this would be so much easier.
That scene is a one-of-a-kind scene. How do you see, every time I talk to you about your films, you seem to take such a light-hearted tone about all of this. The film is so scary and so menacing. How do you manage to keep so distant from...
Well, I'm not really, but once you've seen a movie 400 times through the whole process, you don't even know what you're watching anymore.
Have you ever gone to see this film at a theater where, you know...
Oh, many times. I've seen this film, all over the world at film festivals it was in, and
Do you,
different audiences. And
do you get a kick out of watching people?
well, the reaction is fantastic for this, because at the end of the movie, when the teacher goes after the bad kids in this revenge type of ending, the audiences go wild. They cheer, and there's never been an audience that hasn't.
Oh, God.
Not once have I ever sat in a theater and the audiences don't cheer when the teacher goes after the kids in the film. So in that sense, the film really
That's really
pays off and
an
works.
amazing film. Is it coming back to Los Angeles? at
Yeah,
all?
it's going to be re-released in February with Fast Times at Ridgemont High. So
Okay.
it's both sides of high school in America.
Well, then, after Truck Stop Women, and your next film was what, White House Madness?
Well, I did a sequel to Trisha's Wedding called White House Madness.
Okay. What was
That was
the
the only film I made that wasn't successful at the box office. It didn't make a profit for the film.
What was that film about, and what happened to it after you made it?
Well, what happened with that film was I had this idea after Trisha's Wedding, which launched my career. It was so successful, that I should do a follow-up, and it was at the time of Watergate with Nixon. So the idea was that I had a lot bigger budget at the time, so I built the White House on a sound stage, all the rooms of the White House, and the idea was that Nixon was possessed by the devil. See, it was a spoof of the whole thing.
Could be true, but...
Right, and Billy Graham exercises him in the White House. And it's really hysterical, but the night I opened the film, we did the same thing as with the first film, rented theaters in all different cities, and he resigned from office the night that the film was going to open.
Oh, no.
And the only people that showed up were Republican women's clubs. They thought that it was something to support Nixon in his last days in office.
So then the film has kind of disappeared. It's not really resurfaced from time to time?
No. So I sold it off to a tax shelter to get my money back.
So will White House Madness ever be...
No, I don't think it will ever return, but it's waiting for the return of Nixon. When he comes back, the movie will resurrect it.
In conjunction. Now let's go on after White House Madness. Was it Roller Boogie or Bobby Joe and
No, I
Him?
did. Let's see. What did I did? Bobby Joe and the Outlaw.
Now that's a kind of a fun film too. Can you tell a little bit about that plot and
Well, that's a modern day. That's a updated version of Billy the Kid, actually.
yeah.
And so I really took the story of Billy the Kid and made it take place in the Southwest in America today. So it's about a bank robber.
That was fun. In a way, that reminded me of Truck Stop Women in that you kind of show a slice of Middle America and what's going on there. What attracts you to that specific genre? It's an interesting.
I don't know. I'm very, I'm American, so it becomes like it's a good way to talk about things by showing these little stories about.
Yeah, but so many, most of the people who make movies, everyone wants to capture fashion, New York, excitement.
Right.
And a lot of your films have kind of concentrated on real, down-to-earth people. Is that something that stemmed from a genuine interest in people from your political days, or?
I don't know. I never really. I just wanted to do it comes from wanting to. I just find that it's fun to spoof or make a statement or satirize that type of culture, American culture. So I just find the bizarre quality of whatever that is, and that's what the films become. But of course, the new movie I'm doing is going to be shot in New York, and we'll have more of that. It'll be more like the French Connection type of picture.
So there'll be a lot of chases and that sort of thing?
Oh, there's a lot of action in it.
Oh,
yeah.
good. Can't wait to see that one. Now, what about Roller Boogie, which you did after Bobby Joe?
Actually, I did some other movies between.
Did you?
Did a movie called Stunts.
All right, yeah, I remember that. That was great.
Yeah, on television it was called Who's Killing the Stuntmen?
Yeah.
And that was a murder mystery about movie stuntmen.
There was at the end of that film, there was a helicopter chasing after a car, or there was a whole.
Actually, right.
Wow.
Yeah, it's with the death of those the people in that stunt. I'm very familiar with this type of action, and
Yeah. So what happened after Who's Killing the Stuntman?
and I did a TV movie called Gold of the Amazon Women.
Okay, what was
Kevin Thomas. That was a crazy movie. I don't know what that was.
What was that one about?
That was about two explorers that looking for a lost city of gold, and they get captured by this tribe of Amazon. This actually wasn't television. They get captured by this tribe of Amazon women, and they put them in cages, and they take the men at night, and that's how they have their Amazon babies,
I see.
by using the men, and then the Amazon women lead them to the lost city of gold. And Anita Ekberg played the queen of the Amazon women.
That's a movie that really deserves to be seen again.
It was a very high rating on the
Really?
network, and the movie was shot in Trinidad,
Ah.
and I called it, the producer was Italian producer Alfredo Leone, so everybody called it Spaghetti Jungle. That was what the
Spaghetti
movie-
Giant.
That was what the type of movie it was, instead of a spaghetti western. So
Every time I talk to you about your films, you always say to me, "Gee, wasn't that a crazy film, or wasn't that a weird film?" You always take this very nonchalant attitude towards your films, where most directors that I speak to are very serious and very advocating about your movies. You seem to have a very. Do you think your movies are weird or crazy, or do you? What do you think about them, looking back over your career?
well, once I do, when I'm making them, I feel, I take them very seriously while I'm doing it. But
Yeah.
then years later, I look, I say, geez, how could I have done that movie? What is, and I used to read that, like, Alfred Hitchcock, somebody said, well, do you ever re-look at your old films, or the other directors ask it? And I say, no, never. Once I made that, I haven't seen that movie in 30 years. And I always wondered why before I started making films. And now I know why. You just get so...
Huh.
You just want to finish them, and then by the time you're done with them, you're so tired of them, you never want to talk about them again,
Well, you have a writer, Vernon Zimmerman, is that his name?
He wrote one picture, right?
One of your films.
Right.
What was that?
Bobby Joe and the Outlaw.
He didn't do Truck Stop Women too?
No.
Oh.
No.
Okay. Is he someone who you worked closely with, or
No,
just
just
that
at one time,
Just that one
yeah.
thing. Well, then getting to Roller Boogie, which I think is a real fun film. Did you have fun doing that?
Oh,
or-
that was great time. Yeah, it was fabulous.
There were a lot of really fun shots of the people skating through the ring and doing all sorts of acrobatic type of things. I imagine a lot of choreography went into that.
Definitely, yeah. The choreography was fantastic. It was done by David Winters, who does all the Elvis Presley movies he did, and Cher and Anne Margaret shows, and he's very talented. He did, the dance choreography, and the idea for the movie was to do an old-fashioned Hollywood musical, but on roller skates.
Did that movie finally get Linda Blair out of The Exorcist syndrome?
I think so. Yes, it got her into some other new form of acting.
So then after Roller Boogie, what did you
And then I did Class of 1984.
So there was a couple of years.
I was a producer on a picture called The Funhouse.
All right,
which
yeah, that's another
Universal
one I
made.
wanted
It was
to
a
mention.
horror film.
How were you involved in that? Really directing?
No,
and making-
not very much. Basically, I just helped develop the script and then worked on the.
Did you
executive.
take a look at it after it was done? What did you think of it?
It's a good picture.
Well, you
Very
mentioned
scary.
in an interview that horror films aren't really your.
No, I'm not really interested in making horror films.
That was really a scary film.
Yeah,
That was really scary, and Tobe Hooper is really so talented. Was it fun working with him?
Well, I wasn't that closely involved in the production, but it was a very good film. I was to the extent of visiting the set and so forth. In the meantime, I was developing my own screenplays.
So did you write Class of '84 or?
I wrote the original story,
Yeah.
and then there were two other writers that worked on the picture. Did a very good job. So the three of us ultimately got credit on the screenplay.
Are you going to be writing the Dragon film too?
No, Robert Daly. The book is by Robert Daly, who was the author of Prince of the City and To Kill a Cop, and he's a fantastic writer. And
Are you adopting his book?
yeah, it's his book, and it's a bestseller now. It's in paperback and everywhere, and it's a story of the New York Chinese mafia.
Mm-hmm.
It's very exciting about a police detective, a police captain in Chinatown, who is assigned to stop the Tongs gangs, and what he does, and in trying to stop the violence among the Tong gangs, he comes up against the Chinese mafia, and the police say no, there's no such thing as a Chinese mafia. So he goes off on his own, and he's goes to Hong Kong, and he's hunting down the Chinese Godfather. It's really a tremendous book.
I read an interview that you did that said that you hopefully in the near future want to do some very serious movies. What exactly is this? Is the type of movie that you're talking about?
Yes, I think this is a serious picture, Year of the Dragon. The other movie that I'm doing is called Made in America, which is a book by Peter Maas, who wrote Serpico, and King of the Gypsies, Valachi Papers. And these pictures are both with Dino De Laurentiis.
So you're going to be directing both of them?
Yes. And
Oh, God, so you're all set for the next few years.
yeah, I think it's going to take some time.
Is there any, like Richard Attenborough had his dream project, Gandhi, is there any project you have that you've always wanted to do and now these doors are opening up for you to go into bigger budgets? And
Yeah, I have different books that I've wanted to make, but they're pretty, uncommercial type of projects. So I'm waiting till I can afford to do them. But no, I don't have really a project like that. I just, as things come up, I get an idea and I decide to do it, but nothing that I'm waiting to do.
Well, Mark, looking now over all these films that you have under your belt and then all the work that you've done and starting out trying to get into film school and now being one of the most recognized and accomplished directors in the world, looking back over your career, what do you think? Has it all been surprising to you, or is this exactly what you wanted, or?
Well, that's an interesting question, because you just take each step as it comes, and you don't even realize yourself where you are in a whole career, because you just go from one year to the next, and it becomes work, and so it's hard to judge what your position is exactly in the industry or your career, so it becomes interesting.
Well, then we're going to be looking forward to 2 more films from you after Class of '84, The Year of the Dragon, and what's the other one now?
Made in America.
Made in America, right. And when Class of '84 is re-released in Los Angeles, anyone who hasn't seen it has to really go down to the theater, because that genuinely is a one-of-a-kind film. I've never seen a movie quite like that, and it already is a classic, and it will become. Still, I think this film will really be talked about over the years to come, and certainly you will be also. So we'll look forward to your future work, and thank you for coming down and talking to us.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Join us next week for La Vie en Rose. Thank you. Bye-bye.